This is a Rattle and Hum Sports podcast for Sunday, October the 6th, 2013. I'm Bryan Houston. Thanks very much for joining us. Cowboys lose to the Denver Broncos 51-48. It was a game that just quite literally took your breath away, and then you felt like you were sucker punched when it was all over with. Matthew Postins from Rattle and Hum Sports is with us now to discuss. And Matthew, I watched it, and when I was done watching it, I was left pretty much not even knowing where to start.
Yeah, you know, I love watching these types of games, but I hate writing about them because you really don't know where to begin. I actually covered the SMU-Rutgers game yesterday, and if you know how that one went, it's kind of the same thing. Rutgers won that game 55-52 in 3 overtimes. SMU came back from 21 points down to tie the game. Probably could have won the game at one point. Just one of those toss and turn, seesaw affairs that you really don't see coming, and that was kind of the way today was, too, with the Cowboys and the Broncos. I don't think anybody saw this coming, but we ended up with the result we all expected.
Well, you know, I guess, you know, when it all gets said and done, unfortunately, the only thing people are going to talk about is the interception inside 2 minutes to go that when Romo and the Cowboys had a chance to maybe drive down for the winning field goal. So I guess we might as well start there. Up until that point, Romo was on a career pace. He was getting ready to set what looked like was going to be an NFL record for single-game passing yardage. He'd thrown for over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, and then the pick. Basically, when you saw the pick, what did you think? I mean, was it just a poor decision, a great defensive play? What happened?
It was a little of both. It was a poor decision on his part. He was under pressure. That was obvious. He obviously did not get all the way through that pass. He didn't really have anywhere to step forward. He had the receiver open briefly, but in the time that it took him to throw and let the ball go, the linebacker came in and did a really good job of getting in front of the football and making the play. You know, and that's what I thought initially. When I looked at the replay a little more closely, yes, he was under pressure. Yes, he had nowhere to step up, but there was really much better defense on the receiver than I thought initially. He was pretty much covered up when he threw the football, and if you're looking at it and playing Monday morning quarterback, yeah, it was really more a poor decision by Tony Romo than it was just great defense. And you know, if you're a Romo apologist, you're going to say, hey, you know what, the guy threw for 500 yards and the defense gave him 51 points. That's not his fault. And if you're a Romo hater, you're going to say, yeah, but you know what, we had a chance to win that game. We needed him to make one play, and he didn't. And that's been pretty much the story of his career in Dallas. He puts up incredible stats, but when you really need him to make the play, he doesn't make it.
And my only argument in there, and again, I'm beginning to get very weary with trying to argue for him, but the Cowboys would not even have been in that ball game had it not been for Romo today.
And that's completely accurate. It's completely valid. I mean, we expected Manning to come in and shred the Cowboy defense, and that's exactly what he did. I think to a large degree we expected that if the Cowboys were going to win this game, it was going to have to be with Tony Romo. He had a fantastic football game, but you know what? Quarterbacks are measured by what they do in crunch time. And the reason that the guy across from him today, Peyton Manning, is considered an elite quarterback, and the reason Tony Romo is considered merely a very good quarterback is because of the decisions that they make, for better or worse, in those types of situations. Manning doesn't make those mistakes very often. Romo makes those mistakes too often. It's the quarterback position. It's the most scrutinized position on the field. You're pretty much damned if you do and damned if you don't, because if you don't make a mistake, somebody else gets the praise for it. If you do make a mistake, you get hit for it. But that's what you accept when you play that position in the NFL.
Now, I will have to take issue with Monte Kiffin's defense, which continues to be just off the rails bad. Again, they were scorched today by Manning. The Cowboys had that game under control, 14-0 in the first quarter. They were completely dominating, and just before you could even blink, the Broncos had outscored them 35-6 in a 22-minute span. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just what's going on. I mean, is it just a case that they just don't have the people to run the defense? What's the situation?
Well, I think part of what it is today, and the TV broadcast made a very good point. I think we might have talked about this before the game. Peyton Manning practiced against this defense for several years, not with Monte Kiffin as the coordinator, mind you, but Tony Dungy was the head coach, and he brought the cover 2 with him to Indianapolis. So Peyton Manning has had years of playing this type of defense in practice, and that kind of made things an uphill battle for Monte Kiffin to begin with. Kiffin hasn't exactly had a great history with Manning either. Even with those great Buccaneers defenses, he had a difficult time slowing him down. But getting back to your point, yes, there are issues within this defense. They're still having difficulty defending the deep middle. I think the safety play is really beginning to become a serious issue with this defense because they're giving up too much up the middle. I thought Mo Claiborne played a little better today. I thought Brandon Carr played well today, but they were really hampered by the fact that they're really having problems defending the pass up the middle. Even Sean Lee had problems today. For the second straight game, Sean Lee let a guy get behind him and ended up in a big play. So if you're looking at issues right now, I think a numero uno is they've got to figure out what's going on in the middle of the field because they're giving up too many completions and too much yardage going up the center of the field, and in the cover 2, that doesn't work.
Well, and I have to even maybe argue with you on that. I think the biggest issue is they get absolutely zero pressure on the quarterback. I mean, Manning had pressure one time, and on that play, I think there was a face mask called on it. I mean, he just never seemed to have to ever get uncomfortable.
Yeah, they did not register a sack for the first time today. A couple of things I think play into that. Number one, Manning is expert at getting rid of the football before pressure really gets to him. That offense is so efficient and moves at such a fast rate that Peyton Manning doesn't really have to stand in the pocket that long. You saw Tony Romo had great protection today, and you also saw that he was standing behind that offensive line 4 or 5 seconds today. Well, Manning had great protection too, but he got rid of the football a lot faster, and I think that plays a role in that. The other part of it is he has a better offensive line than the Cowboys. Even with Ryan Clady being out for the season, he flat out has a better offensive line than the Dallas Cowboys. So he's going to have more time to throw. It's going to be harder to get pressure on him, and you saw that all day today. The Cowboys just were not able to get any kind of sustained pressure on the quarterback for the first time this season.
There were some bright spots, obviously, offensively. Not the running game. The running game seemed to work, and then once again the Cowboys get away from it. And in this ball game, it didn't make any sense to get away from it. They were in the ball game to the bitter end. I don't understand why they abandoned the running game.
Yeah, you know what? That first drive was pretty much a template to me of how you beat the Denver Broncos, the way they're playing the football right now. You mix the run and the pass. You get the football down the field and you score touchdowns. And then they were lucky enough to get the turnover. They converted that into a touchdown. They suddenly had a 14-0 lead. They were up 17-7 at one point. And for whatever reason, Bill Callahan channeled Jason Garrett and what he did last year, which was, let's put the ball in Tony Romo's hands and let him throw it around. And, yeah, it worked. But in a game like this, when you have such a potent offense, it makes so much more sense to run the football. And for whatever reason, and I'm sure they'll say that it was probably a matchup thing, or it was, we were taking what the defense gave us. Yeah, but you know what? You need to run the football. The Broncos ran the football more effectively than the Cowboys did today. Sean Moreno had a very nice afternoon, 19 carries, 93 yards. DeMarco Murray, 12 carries. He was practically non-existent in the second half of this football game. Part of that was the situation, but had the Cowboys put more effort into running the football in the first half, maybe he would have had a better day, and maybe we wouldn't have had a 51-48 game. Maybe it would have been more like 35-31, like I was thinking he was going to be going in.
Well, what I think about with the lack of the running game is you look at the number of plays. What did the Broncos have in the first quarter? 7 plays? I mean, that's why you run the football, because you eat up clock and you keep those guys on the sideline.
I completely agree, and I was kind of baffled myself as the game went on. I'm like, I understand that you're behind now, but even in the first half, they got away from it. After that first drive, they got away from running the football, and I wonder if maybe they thought to themselves, hey, with a 14-point lead, maybe we can get a little more aggressive. And I think that is what kind of put them behind the 8 ball, because the Broncos came back from that turnover and scored 5 straight touchdowns. And if you're running the football more effectively and you're possessing the football more, that doesn't happen.
One of the things that definitely changed in this ball game was the Cowboys went deep. They started throwing the ball downfield today, and they ended up with 3 receivers, including Witten. with over 100 yards, and Terrence Williams had a breakout game today.
Yeah, he did. It's actually the second time this season they've had 3 receivers with more than 100 yards receiving. The difference in this game being what you were talking about. They got down the field a lot more, and they took advantage of a very suspect Denver secondary that didn't have Champ Bailey at one of the corners. They really burned a lot of guys today. I thought Terrence Williams had a fantastic game. The one quibble I have was that catch on the sideline late in the second quarter where he should have gotten out of bounds but didn't. The Cowboys could have turned that into a touchdown rather than a field goal. But that's something he's going to learn. But I was wanting to see what kind of a game he would have because of what happened in San Diego last weekend, and he turned in a terrific effort. He showed why the Cowboys drafted him in the 3rd round as opposed to drafting a defensive end or another player in a position of need. He has explosiveness that could really serve as a great counterpoint to Des Bryant, who, despite being just brutally covered up for the last few weeks, continues to produce.
Now, there's a sequence of plays when the Cowboys were up 17-7, still had a chance to blow this thing wide open. They had the ball down inside, what was it, 1st and goal, inside the 10-yard line. They throw a short pass, incomplete over the middle. They throw a short pass on 2nd down, incomplete over the middle. And then Romo gets sacked, and they end up having to try a 43-yard field goal when I think they were down at the 8-yard line. Once again, classic example. Where was the running game? I just don't understand.
Yeah, you know what? You look at that drive, and I'm looking at it right now, and they started out with 2 passes. In fact, they started out with 3 passes, and that spilled over into the second quarter. They started that drive with, like you were saying, the 2 passes, the sack, then the deep pass to Witten. That got them to the Denver 25. Then they come back with the running game with carries of 9 and 13 yards. Of course, the second carry was erased by a penalty, and then after that, 3 straight passes. So, this Broncos defense looked vulnerable to the run, at least in the first half of this game. And why they went away from the running game, it's really baffling. But you know what? We've talked about this before. This Cowboys team has done this repeatedly the last year and a half. Garrett did it last year in Seattle. He did it in several other instances. For whatever reason, this team just won't buy into running the football on a regular basis. They simply won't do it. And what's really kind of painful about it today is because this offensive line's playing better. Brian Waters has made this offensive line better. Travis Frederick has made this offensive line better. There are fewer penalties. There are fewer protection breakdowns. There are bigger holes for running backs to go through, and yet they still won't buy in.
It's amazing. As far as talking about the defense, I mean, really, the only good thing I can say about the defense is Claiborne's interception, because that seemed to turn the ball game back and turn the momentum back in Dallas's favor, and they were able to get back in the ball game and then end up making it a real shootout. Claiborne with a huge turnover right there. That was might have been the play of the game had the Cowboys won the game.
Yeah, it was an underthrown pass by Peyton at that particular point in the game. The Broncos had just come back and made it an 11-point game. I take that back. I'm not exactly sure what point in the game that was or what the lead was, but at that particular point, they needed a turnover, and they got it. And the great thing about it is they turned that turnover into a touchdown and ended up getting the lead in the game. We talked before the game about the fact that Claiborne had been benched, that he had been talking about not having a whole lot of confidence in himself going into this game, and perhaps benching him and letting him work in different situations that didn't necessarily have to do with putting pressure on him to be the starter. Maybe that helped him today, because I thought he played better. He was around the football when the fumble happened. He recovered it. He was in great position to pick off that pass by Manning. And, those turnovers are what helped keep the Cowboys in this football game. Despite all the yardage and all the points they gave up, had those 2 turnovers not occurred, the Broncos would have won this game by 14 points. So if you're a Mo Claiborne fan, what you're hoping is that this carries over into the next couple of games against the Eagles and the Redskins, because they need a confident Morris Claiborne who can make plays for them if they're going to be successful this year.
Okay, so it's all said and done. The Cowboys are now 2-3 for the third straight year, and in each of those years they didn't make the playoffs. So where do we go from here with these Cowboys? I mean, what kind of damage did this loss do to them and their psyche?
Well, from a psyche standpoint, we'll see. I mean, this is the kind of loss that can really take its toll on a football team. I mean, you have a team like Denver coming in undefeated, setting all kinds of records, a quarterback playing at the top of his game, and you go toe-to-toe with him for 60 minutes, and you trade punches with him, and you nearly win the football game. It could be one of those really debilitating losses mentally. And we're just going to have to see if that's the case or not. Now, from a season standpoint, like I said earlier this week, losing this game really doesn't hurt you that much because you've got two games coming up against Washington and Philadelphia. Those are the more important games in this stretch. You win both of those games, you move back to 4-3. You get your lead back in the NFC East because you lost it today because the Eagles won, and you get a 3-0 record in your division after the first round going through all three teams. So, for the Cowboys, it's important not to dwell on this game because their playoff hopes aren't necessarily pinned on losing to Denver. They're pinned on next week and the week after playing Washington at home and then Philadelphia on the road. They win both of those games. We're not going to be thinking nearly as much about this Broncos game other than the fact that it just turned into one of those real shootouts in which the Cowboys had a real legitimate chance to win and couldn't close the deal. And if that's one of the bigger issues right now. They have a chance to be 5-0. They could be 5-0 right now, and they've missed chances in all three losses this year, which I think is as big a trend as anything else coming out of this football game. This team has struggled mightily closing the deal the past 2.5 years under Jason Garrett, and it looks like that hasn't rectified itself.
All right, and so then the rest of this week is going to be two topics. One, can this defense be fixed in time to salvage this season? Because right now they just wave at people as they go by. That's the first question. You answer that one first.
I think there's still time to fix this defense. I believe in Monte Kiffin and I believe in Rod Marinelli. I believe in what they're capable of doing. I think this might go back to the situation where maybe this defense just does not have enough talent right now to get it done. I think Sean Lee ultimately will end up being fine. I think Bruce Carter will end up being fine. I have concerns about the defensive line and the rotation and the depth, and I'm starting to have serious concerns about the safety position. They had problems after Barry Church left the game, and Church is one of the best safeties they have, and they can't afford to lose him for a whole lot of time if his injury is serious. I think they still have time to turn it around. I would love to see them go out and get a Kyle Vanden Bosch or bring in one of these free agent defensive ends that could help them on the opposite side. I think it would really help them from a pass rush standpoint because I think as you move forward into the season, I think their depth issues are going to become a real concern at defensive end. I think they can turn it around, but I think you're probably going to see some more growing pains in the next couple of weeks before you see them turn a corner.
And then, of course, the other topic is going to be what it always is after a game like this. And I got it on Twitter and Facebook already. Romo turned into Romo, same old Romo.
Yep.
And then one guy asked the question, does this eventually affect the locker room, the Tony Romo blunders? I don't know how to answer that anymore.
You know what? I don't know how to answer that question either because we've seen it so many times out of him the past few years that, like you said, these people are coming out and saying, well, same old Romo. It's almost as if they're resigned to the fact that he's just going to make these kinds of mistakes in crunch time. And, it really is the one thing that separates him from guys like Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, guys who have won Super Bowls. That's the one thing. In every other way, Tony Romo is a fantastic quarterback. I mean, he is capable of playing mistake-free football. He's capable of putting up huge numbers. He's capable of influencing how a football game is won and lost. The one thing that he just has not been able to overcome, and it's been throughout his career, is when it really matters, when it's in the final few minutes of a game, and you've got to have a play to win the game or put the Cowboys in position to win the game, he simply can't get it done. And the bad news for Cowboys fans is that unless he figures that out, and, at his age, as long as he's been in the NFL, I'm not sure that's a trick he can learn. You've got 4 more years of this before his contract finally runs out.
And what I'm beginning to sense, and this just goes back to Cowboys history, is that you remember the fans got so hard on Don Meredith that he finally just walked away. And, I just kind of see that this Shakespearean drama, this heartbreak, just kind of heading that way.
Well, there's one clear difference between Don Meredith and Tony Romo. Tony Romo makes a whole lot more money.
Yeah. Don Meredith got into a few NFC championship games.
He did, and so did Danny White. And, that's, Super Bowls are what define Cowboy quarterbacks, and it's the reason why Roger Staubach and Troy Aikman are in the Hall of Fame and in the Ring of Honor, and, the reason why Don Meredith and Danny White are not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Super Bowls. That's what we define Cowboys quarterbacks by, and that's what Tony Romo will ultimately be defined by when his career is over.
And then, so we have to look at the bright side. Cowboys are not the Giants. The Giants are 0-5 now.
Yeah, you know what? The Giants are pretty much out of it at this point at 0-5. I don't think a team has ever come back from 0-5 to make the playoffs. So theoretically, they're eliminated from this race. The Redskins are kind of flailing around. The Eagles may have found something today with Nick Foles. He came in and played very well after Michael Vick hurt his hamstring. But the Cowboys have to get through the Redskins first before they can worry about the Philadelphia Eagles. But should the Cowboys beat the Redskins and the Eagles win next week, then you're looking at a game in Philadelphia that will be for the lead in the NFC East.
And that's the way the NFC East ought to be, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Absolutely.
Matthew, what's coming up this week on Rattle and Hump Sports?
Well, certainly a lot of chatter about Tony Romo. I want to explore the decision-making at the end of the game, and we really didn't talk about this much. I would have preferred to have seen Jason Garrett tell the defense to let Noshawn Marino score on that one running play, and at least give the offense another opportunity to have the football and try and tie the game. It's one of those things that, frankly, is kind of verboten in pro football. You never talk about letting the other team score. You never talk about doing that sort of thing. Mike Holmgren did it in the Super Bowl at one point, and I thought at that particular point in time it was the right decision, because in a game like that you can't score unless you have the football. So we're going to explore that a little bit, along with everything else going into the Redskins game.
Let me just throw one thing out. We're talking about Peyton Manning in the huddle. Do you not think Peyton Manning probably told Noshawn, if you get a shot, fall down?
It's very possible that he did, and I'd love to hear what Manning has to say about that after the game. I haven't seen the post-game quotes yet, but if you're Peyton Manning and you're a guy who thinks 3 steps ahead of everybody else, certainly I think that's probably something that came up in the huddle. But, the Cowboys just basically stood up, and in that situation, I kind of feel like you almost surrender, because you know what's coming. You know they're going to put themselves in position to kick a field goal. Why not just trip over yourself and let Noshawn Marino score? And if he lays down, he lays down. If he lays down at the 1 foot line, good play by Noshawn Marino, smart on his behalf. But the Cowboys didn't even give that a shot. Basically, after Romo threw the interception, it was all about trying to keep the Broncos from scoring. And I think once that ball got inside the 1 yard line, to me, it was like, let him score, get the ball back with a minute and a half to play and 1 timeout, give Romo a chance to tie the game.
And hear the fans go nuts again.
And hear them go nuts again.
All right. So you'll be talking about that and all that other stuff coming up. And, of course, later on this week we'll get into a preview of the Cowboys-Redskins game for next Sunday night.
Absolutely.
All right, Matthew, great talking to you as always. We probably could have gone on for hours, but the topic would have been pretty redundant. It would have been basically Romo.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I think it's been covered. All right, Matthew, thanks very much for being on with us today as always.
Thanks, Bryan.
All right. Matthew Postins covering the Dallas Cowboys for Rattle and Hum Sports. I'm Bryan Houston. This is a Rattle and Hum Sports podcast. Thanks very much for listening, and we hope you'll listen next time.